Hey, the date is October 27th, 3 days before Halloween. Um, the lights are broken in the shed, and it's kind of fitting with Halloween coming up, so we're gonna keep this ominous lighting from the lamp that's in front of me. So for this week's episode, I wanted to talk about therapy and how I think the utility of therapy in the common age, in the common era, has decreased significantly, and why I don't necessarily think therapy, as far as the traditional definition of therapy being hiring a therapist or even a psychiatrist to speak about your issues on a regular basis, why I think that means of therapy has significantly gotten worse. The first thing that I want to start off with is what it is, essentially, at least my perception of it. I think the utility of therapy can be easily replaced by two things. One is the courage and bravery to sit with yourself long enough to confront your issues and to define it yourself and to fully face it and take the steps necessary to resolve those problems. I believe that everyone has the means to elevate themselves. Um, Maybe not always externally, materialistically, but internally, that means is always there. And sitting with yourself, which is easier said than done, um, with silence and non judgment and with patience, is a necessary component of elevating your life. Um, the other aspect is fulfilling relationships, fulfilling friendships, fulfilling platonic, familial, maybe even romantic relationships. The presence of that greatly um, removes the need for a lot of the things that a therapist fills. You're essentially, at least my view of it, you're essentially hiring a friend to act as a soundboard to your problems, to take on the burden of your problems by listening to them on a regular basis. I think finding relationships, finding meaningful relationships, has become a lot more difficult for people in the Gen Z generation, even millennial generation, just people in this common age that we're in, and that's reflected on increased advertising and increased market need for what are essentially hired friends or hired people to listen to your problems. This goes to the next part, which is that I do believe there is utility. And if I'm looking down, it's because I have really cursory notes that I'm looking at. I do think there is general utility for therapy as far as the cognitive behavioral therapy that people commonly experience when they hire a therapist, or the speaking kind of therapy. But there are other forms. I don't think that that means of therapy is really effective for a lot of men. I'm speaking from my experience, but also statistically, men uh, are much less likely to do therapy and are much more reluctant to do it earlier than later. Um, and I think it's because some people benefit from having a soundboard for your problems, and to have a sense of being heard and empathized with. But for many men and for many people in general, not necessarily a gendered idea, but for predominantly men, I think therapy, self therapy, or even aided therapy that utilizes problem solving, more action oriented things, um, uh, things that provide the sense of forward mobility, of creation, of construction towards something, as opposed to limerence and lingering over your problems and rumination. Somatic therapy is also greatly underutilized. Somatic therapy being um, the release of emotions through movement, through running, combat sports, basketball, soccer, you name it. Just the release of energy, of internalized and unresolved emotion through movement. Now, this brings to question what that benefit is and what are the downsides of over relying on this traditional means of therapy being talking. The issue, I believe, is that your energy and thereby your actions um, are dependent on your thoughts. When the more you focus on negative aspects of your life, the more space they take up in your head and the more they slowly consume every aspect of your living experience. So there is benefit to acknowledging what your problems are, but to immediately take action on them and to not ruminate or linger on those issues. The issue with therapy is that you'll be stuck in a childhood issue for years, even decades for some people, with little to no progress. There's a point at which it's good to acknowledge your issues, but to just move on after that point. And I think a lot of people fall victim to rumination and lingering over those issues because it's profitable to the therapist and to the industry. This leads to my last point, and if I got cut off, it's because the space on my phone died, so I have to record this in segments. This leads to the next issue, which is the cheapening of the industry. There was a time when therapy was an incredibly useful and beneficial tool to use for serious cases in which it was actually needed. The benefit of change is that it's become a lot more accessible. Therapy has become a lot more accessible, but with that increase in accessibility, it's been cheapened. Um, and because it's profitable, their incentive is to just treat their patients as clients, just try to get as many patients as possible. Which is why I think it's overutilized and oversold. And you see this with the advent and new popularity of companies like BetterHelp and other companies that exist within the space. So those are kind of my thoughts on this topic. I just wanted to share them after thinking about it for a while, actually. Let me know if you have any thoughts, comments, anything like that in the comments. And I appreciate whoever's watching this video. All right, catch you in the next one.